Hello, everyone. I'm Jane Golden, the Executive Director of Mural Arts Philadelphia. I'll be your host tonight for a great conversation. And I want to let you know that this is Art in Action, a muraLAB series discussing how artists are working with public agencies and community organizations to address the social issues that the COVID-19 pandemic has raised. For those of you who aren't familiar with mural arts, we do public art everywhere, and we work with citizens across our city. We're sort of the intersection of the public, the private, the social, the civic, and the aesthetic. We believe deeply and passionately in the merging of art and social change. And muraLAB, the series tonight, is part of the Mural Arts Institute, a program of mural arts dedicated to knowledge sharing and expanding innovation within the field of socially engaged art. So tonight's topic, well, it's been nearly 2 months since the city reported its first confirmed case of coronavirus. And quickly, and I think very quickly, our city moved into action. I've worked with the city for 35 years. We have made it through 5 mayors. And I want to say it's an honor and privilege to be a city employee. And I'm impressed with my colleagues across the city. And truly, there has been nothing like what's going on now. This pandemic is really unprecedented. And so it called upon us to think, like, what does our world at Mural Arts look like? And so we flew into action to create initiatives that employ artists, because that's so important. Art means everything. To bring together beauty and public health messaging, to engage our students, our restorative justice program participants, and to continue to advance an agenda of art that is connected to important social and civic issues. And a number of people have been really critical in our response and have been hugely inspiring. And so tonight, we're going to be talking to a few extra special people. One person, our first guest, is Mica Root. She is the Get Healthy Philly Senior Projects Coordinator in the Department of Public Health. Mica is a model of a public servant. She has dedicated her career to improving communities. And I know this for certain because I've known her for years, and she's amazingly dedicated, smart, insightful, tenacious, all those things. She's really remarkable. And she's done incredible work in response to the pandemic. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have Nilé Livingston, yay, a talented artist, muralist, graphic designer, all around great human being. And we have been working with Nilé for years, which means, oh, we are blessed. And she is just a visionary. And we were also going to be joined by Joanna Otero Cruz, the City of Philadelphia's Deputy Managing Director for Community Service. But she had an emergency, and so she could not join us. And we're keeping her family in our prayers. And please know that Joanna is, like Mica, a remarkable public servant. So we're going to start with Mica. So Mica, I want to pose a question to you. I want you to talk about your response to the pandemic. You clearly, and your department, flew into action, and you're so thoughtful, and I think your colleagues are as well. And your leadership really, I mean, I see it, it's really inspiring. Can you tell us, like, how it was for you when the virus broke out, when it was clear this was an emergency like none other, what your response was and your colleagues, how you flew into action, and sort of take us through the last month?
Yeah.
Question.
So I am a staff person in Get Healthy Philly, which is the colloquial name for the Division of Chronic Disease and Injury Prevention. We do not generally think that much about infectious diseases, crisis response in my division. Luckily, the health department is made up of many divisions, including the Division of Disease Control and the Health Commissioner's Office, who had been preparing for this, and I had not actually seen my own division director in a couple of weeks, because she was, along with a lot of the health department's leadership and the program staff who generally, you know, were preparing for what was coming. I think, you know, I to be honest, not a great public health servant, not paying that much attention. I was really focused on the assessment of water access and appeal in the school district that I was working on, and thinking about the virus as interrupting that project, and how long would it interrupt that project for, really. And I think it was when it actually did come to Philadelphia, when I joined the more prepared members of my department in recognizing what this moment was, and that it did call on us to bring all of our skills and experiences to the table beyond what we might have been working on at that moment. And I am grateful to folks I work with for letting me go back to some of my more organizing and network building roots, to be able to work with lots of exciting collaborators on the health department's response.
That's great. Well, I think actually the fact that you came out of an organizing background, I think it's great that you're in city government. I think that, don't you think that that you can pull on those skill sets all the time? Yeah, yay. I mean, I was very happy when you you took the job with the city. I was cheering. And would you just talk about what you were doing before, just a little bit? Just about the media mobilizing project?
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, I was part of starting an organization called Media Mobilizing Project, that believes that movements begin with the telling of untold stories, and use media and communications, and both the products and the process, very similar to mural arts work, as key tools to connect up different issues, different communities, to try to build something stronger together than any one organization could do on its own. For many years, we shared an office with the Unified Taxi Workers Alliance of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Student Union. And so our three organizations had a movement hub in West Philly. Media Mobilizing Project, I left MMP staff. I'll never leave it, but I left staff in 2012. There were other leaders who had come up through the organization who were poised to play the roles that I had been playing. I became a lifeguard for the city of Philadelphia because I didn't know what I was going to do next, and that was the funnest thing I could think of, and to still bring in some income. MMP, as we were called, changed its name this past December to the Movement Alliance Project, and is still going strong. Yeah, and so I became a lifeguard. I think after many years of railing against everything that is wrong and unjust in our society and needs to change, and still needs to change, I wanted to be part of making change from a different angle, and be part of making the things that are really strong and good in our society as functional and strong as they could be. And to me, our city pools have always been an example of that, a flawed and yet shining, sparkling example of that. And so that was my first role with the city. I took the civil service exam to be a rec leader. I was working in an after-school program at a rec center after the summer ended and lifeguarding ended. And I was about to become a lifeguard, or a rec leader rather, when a job came open in public health. And sort of in that intervening time, I had learned about public health. I don't have a public health background, and realized that public health has a really deep understanding of the fundamental root problems that we are facing in our society. And for people's health to get better, we need to attack racism as a public health issue. We need to attack poverty as a public health issue. And so I realized that these were people in the inside who were thinking about the same things that I and my comrades had been thinking about on the outside. And ended up joining public health instead of becoming a rec leader.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. That's I know that because of you, I started to really see pools as civic assets. I don't think I sort of thought about them as deeply as I did after talking to you, and so you had an influence on me. And I think that it's, I think that the city, there's so much power there to create change. And so I think it's wonderful when people, like you have both insiders and outsiders, and you have people who haven't been in government come into government, and and vice versa, right? It just, I think, makes our society richer, and it keeps us on point and helps propel us forward as it relates to making change. So thank you. And so, when we think about changing things, so I feel in Mural Arts, we feel pretty driven to think about, like, how do we move the needle, like, all the time. And I'm here like talking from Mural Arts, but really it's a village of extraordinary people who help make things happen. And when the crisis happened, we had to think how we could pivot. So we want to show you a couple examples of things that we have been working on. And we have we've launched something called Extraordinary Figures which will shine a light on people throughout the city doing really wonderful work, giving back in many different ways. And I think that often we think of a hero or someone extra special as someone who is a celebrity, or they're famous, or we deify people, put them on a pedestal, when really it could be your neighbor, a community leader, and a block captain, a nurse. All over our city, people are rising all the time, and we want to shine a light on them. And we have a cohort of artists who are great portrait painters, from self-taught to classically trained, who are going to be doing these beautiful portraits. And these portraits are by Luis Suave Gonzalez, a colleague of mine, who has a Hero of the Day project, and we were inspired by his. So we're going to have unite artists with the people who are nominated, and then we'll have an online gallery, beautiful online gallery, and then it's our hope and aspiration to find a low, long wall somewhere in the city and do a wall of portraits. So if anyone out there has a low, long wall, you can call us, because we often get tips for walls, and this is no different. And and the deadline is May 22nd. Please go to our website and nominate someone. I know you know someone. I do. I've already nominated. And then we have a long-standing partnership with the Department of Behavioral Health, and it's wonderful. And because of that, we have our Porch Light program, where we work with people who are struggling with housing insecurity or addiction or trauma. And we have these great storefronts. We work with agencies, and we provide services to literally thousands and thousands of people, and work with great artists who shine a light on issues in people's lives all the time. And we designed this coloring book for both teens and adults grappling with the trauma of the moment. And it's really beautiful, and it's sort of a meditation, but it's also really helpful. And they're great reflections and suggestions. And the Department of Behavioral Health just ordered like 10,000, and we're so happy. So we have a real way to distribute this work of art, that is this booklet that will help people deal with this very, very stressful moment. And if you would like one, we will definitely have information on our website where you can get one. And we also have downloadable posters as well. So that is super exciting. And then we have Homeschool with Mural Arts. And, we have really wonderful teaching artists. We serve about 2,200 young people every year in our programs. You can come into our program at age 11 and stay till you're 18. And then we have an alumni group, and we get scholarships for kids, and we're like a family. So we hope people stay with us like a long, long time. And so we have these great classes going on all the time with poets like Ursula Rucker, or great visual artists. And you should tune in, because it's for young people, but it's also for families, for anyone who likes art. And we believe really deeply in art education. And this summer, our Mural Mobile will be on the move and going to play streets near you. And we hope to be working with kids on their porches and having murals done all over the city. So we're sort of expansive thinkers. You can't stop, right? Because you have to just push forward. So luckily, we're surrounded by creative people. And then we have Murals on the Fly, which is where we have drones that have gone over the murals. And so you can tune in and go for a tour, sort of see your city in a different light and get reacquainted with Philly again, because everyone feels sort of lonely and disconnected. And you could see beautiful works of art like the Amy Sherrill mural and hear about the history of these murals that are so completely inspiring. And there is Rebecca Rudstein's mural, the AT&T building, which is so beautiful. And that looks so scary as they're up there on that scaffolding. But they're, geniuses, the people who painted it. So it's really lovely. And hopefully if you go on our website and you take one of these virtual tours, because we have a number of virtual tours, it will take you out of where you are and sort of, it's sort of like a window that you've opened up and you're into another world. So we hope that you join us for that, for one of our virtual tours or programs that we have. And so now, Nael, I want to ask you a question. So Nael, we've worked together for a long time, and you are the quintessential multitasker. And what I really love yes people. I love when you can call up someone and they're like, yes, yes, yes. And so I love the fact that when Broad Street Ministry came to us and said, we're going to have these hand washing stations and we think there should be murals behind them. And I love Broad Street Ministry. I'm like, yes. So, you know what the truth is? Mostly I say yes. I don't like when people say no to me, so I always say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But then I call you, yes, of course I'll do a mural. And it was so beautiful. And I just wanted to know, what was that like for you to get involved in a rapid response project? Talk to us about your design and how it came to be.
So when you approached me to work on the mural for the Broad Street Ministry, at that time I saw the need for art now more than ever. With people staying home, I'm sure more people are watching films or listening to music, and these are all creative expressions. So when it came to painting the mural, I saw it as an opportunity to uplift spirits, to share information, to draw attention to this public resource. So I jumped on the opportunity and I tried to reflect what was happening in the world. And at that time, more people were wearing masks. So I made sure that all the figures in the mural had on masks, and we were given text or information to incorporate into the mural. So mine just asked people to stay 6 feet away from each other and to wash their hands.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful. And I've seen people, because sometimes I walk that way in Center City and I see people standing in front of it and looking at it. And I think we're going to see it in a minute. In 1 minute. There it is. Look at that.
Yeah.
So Nael, yes, talk about it.
It was painted very quickly. I think when this pandemic began, I also see art as a valuable tool for survival. So I just felt passionate enough to stay up all night and quickly produce work as fast as I could for the rapid response projects. So this is one of them.
Yeah, thank you. It's really beautiful. And everyone, you should know that we have 6 of them now. And over 5,000 people in Philly experience housing insecurity. And they probably do not have access to clean water and to soap. And so the hand washing stations are invaluable. And I think what your mural does, it sort of calls you to the station, right? Because it's like, if you see them without the mural, you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's missing something. So It's really, really beautiful. And the message is important. And, it's like, I think that public health messaging, I think Mica put it this way, like accurate, trustworthy public health messaging is so critical. And so one of our colleagues, Kate Jacoby, had this idea because she had been standing in supermarket lines with there's just a black line to keep people 6 feet apart. And she said, well, why can't we have artists design like these decals and that tell people just, really ask people to stay 6 feet apart. And I was like, oh my God, public health meets public art. That's exciting. And so we did some, and we put them in the ShopRite in South Philly. And it was just really so exciting because suddenly people were like, oh, that's interesting. It's so much more like inspiring. And then we thought, wait a minute, we could also employ lots of artists. So we started working with Step Up to the Plate, we worked with the Broad Street Ministry, at MSB, in City Hall, and then we're working with Prevention Point in Kensington. And then I got a call from Mica. And so Mica, talk about what sort of inspired you to reach out to us. What was it about those space pads?
It actually wasn't the space pads. I didn't know about the space pads until we started talking. I saw Niall's mural, and I had been, you know, I'd been reassigned from my regular work to the COVID-19 communications team for the health department, and was just, you know, we were all, you know, how, you know, this was in the very beginning. Social distancing was a completely new idea for most of us. And it was just, you know, how do we get people's attention? How do we communicate with 1.5 million people at, you know, in this crisis situation? What can we show or say or do that will speak to people? And I think, you know, we were thinking about that with social distancing, with hand washing, with all of the key information that at that point was so new, and understanding what was going on. And, you know, this was the constant question in my mind. And when I saw Niall's mural, not in person, but a picture of it, I was like, that is how we get people's attention. So I texted someone who is close to Jane asking, we put out a lot of feelers in lots of different ways trying to reach artists, one of which was texting someone who is close to Jane and asking, hey, do you think this might be something Mural Arts would want to work? And I think 15 minutes later, you actually emailed me before I'd even gotten a chance to follow up on the enthusiastic response that yes, you would probably want to work on that.
That's great. Niall, do you hear you? So you're the catalyst.
Yeah, I'm really happy that the mural pulled attention and led to more collaboration.
And what's so great, you know, I think, Mica, we're very excited when we get to work with bigger departments, because I always think about systems change and the role of arts as it relates to that change. And I feel very strongly that we need people at the top of the food chain to open the door so we can go in and try to do our work more expansively. So, so if you could talk a little bit about, like, as it's the Department of Public Health, like, how do people there see the art? How, now that we've done almost, I think, over 2,000 space pads. We've worked with the Housing Authority, food distribution sites, bodegas, markets. It's really like everywhere. And that is super exciting. So talk about that sort of convergence and what that means. And just as someone who's an art lover too, like for you, just when you think about systems change and the role of art.
Yeah.
And changing behavior.
I am so much less of an art lover than I should be. I love art, but I'm actually not someone who starts from, I'm not an artist. I'm not someone who starts from a place of art is everything, as you said earlier. I think, you know, I came to this really being like, this is how we get our messages out. Like, it's a very sort of pragmatic, not about beauty or hope or larger, just like, how do we get our message out? I think I have been won over a lot through the process, as I have been in the past also when I've gotten a chance to work with artists, and just, yeah, seeing that. I think, and I will say that of certainly this project, other things that we have created out of the public health department and out of the city in general, in this moment, the ones that people comment on, the ones that get attention, are the ones that are beautiful, that bring something else to the table beyond just the dry information. So I get, communications from people all the time with pictures of space pads they've seen out in the world.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I was talking to Angela Duckworth the other day, who was talking about, she was talking to some other behavioral health scientists and talking about behavior change and the importance messages that are out there. And so in a sense, we're always getting messages through billboards, through media, right, all the time. And how do we co-opt that for the greater good? I think that is a question, and certainly a question for us. And I feel like sort of driven that that's part of our responsibility to sort of use art in a really practical way. I mean, when the Department of Behavioral Health Commissioner first called us in to work, it was really like they couldn't get their message across to people. People said, you know what, I don't want to be, the city gives us no services or bad services. This is 2007. So we're not interested. So in working with us, somehow, in some way, people were able to feel differently, to absorb a different message, and to hear that maybe there was help for them that was trustworthy. And over the years, so we have maintained those two paths, aspiration and pragmatism. And that brings me, Nael, to you, because you are an artist, a muralist, and a graphic designer who's worked with messaging. And so could you talk a little bit about your trajectory and how you see the sort of the blurring of all of those areas, and maybe also talk a little bit about the project you did for leadership?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see art as just something that should be beautiful or decorative. For me, art, it's a tool for survival, and I see it as something that's necessary. I'm thinking about this quote from James Baldwin where he says, only artists can communicate or translate what it's like to get into the world and to survive it. So I see artwork as a way of offering people hope and a look into the future. And the project that you're talking about with Leadership Philadelphia, it's the Movement Closer project, where I took snapshots from around Philadelphia and put messages and Photoshop them into the image. For example, the sculpture at Love Park in near City Hall, that question is, what do you love about your best friend? The goal of the project is to inspire more compassion and empathy and dialogue with people around you.
That was a beautiful project. And so could you talk a little bit more about like sort of about it being about survival and sort of what it means for our collective humanity in the city? So it's, because I like where you're going with that. Because at a time when there are arts cuts in the city, everywhere talking about the importance of arts, it's good to hear it from you.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, we need artists to go to work. Some of the artists that have inspired me are artists who have made work while they were imprisoned or in exile or hounded. For example, Frida Kahlo made her paintings while she was in her bed, crippled, or Ai Weiwei made art while his father was exiled and he was also later thrown in prison. Paul Robeson made art as an expat. So I think although we are always constantly struggling, I think when we feel it more than ever, it's a time where artists need to step in and hopefully offer us more hope for the future.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And Mica, do you, like, when you think of all the work that's going on now in the health department or that you see across the city, could you cite like a creative approach, like something that we as citizens would find, oh, that's unexpected, that's interesting, like, how, what do you think is sort of something that's really going right and that you think is sort of a creative out of the box thinking going on?
The thing that I have found most exciting about this moment is the ways that things that were not possible, I mean, most exciting about this terrible moment. I mean, most in general, excitement is not the main word I would use to categorize the last 2 months. But the thing that has really given me hope is the ways that things that are not possible in normal times can become possible when required. I think cities around the country have turned people's water back on that was shut off because they couldn't pay for it. And this moment required us to understand that that's not good for anyone, that everyone needs water, whether they can pay for it or not. And that's actually in all of our interest to make sure that that is the case. So, I mean, that's something that happens in Philadelphia and in cities around the country. And I'd say there are other examples of that in Philadelphia, even just at the level of interdepartmental cooperation. Figuring out ways of communicating and sometimes getting through the bureaucracy that sometimes keeps us working in silos. And I mean, the moment has demanded these things, and we, in lots of ways have been able to rise to meet it. So many things that could always be better.
And do you think this could sustain this kind of thinking, the collaborations, what you're saying?
I think that's one of the things we have to fight for going forward.
And for Nayel, have there been interesting collaborations that you have seen come out of the moment?
Yeah, I see artists, they're still writing, dancing, sharing their works on their platform. Aside from my collaborations with Philadelphia Mural Arts, a lot of bloggers have also stepped up, such as the Streets Department. I'm working on a project to try to thank the people who are on the front lines. Mm-hmm. It's taken a lot of adjustments, but people are definitely collaborating more now than ever. And hopefully this leads to more people operating out of a place of abundance and coming together as a community.
Well, what's interesting is that there's definitely, I think that it is shining a light on things. It's not like suddenly everything was right before this and now everything is wrong, right? So it's, I think, you're both saying that too. It's sort of like there are systemic issues, not just in Philadelphia, but cities across the country that this is shining a light on. Like, I think it's interesting in the criminal justice system, how people are being let out, right? And it's like, oh, well, if they could get out now, why was there a reason they couldn't get out before? I just, and I think there are lots of things like that going on. So what can we keep? And also I have to say, as a person who's a big fan of the WPA, which, in the 1930s, it rose out of the ashes of the Depression, and Roosevelt smartly gave jobs to musicians and writers and visual artists, and also parks were built and trails were built. And so how do we marshal this moment to do something great, to do something that's life-changing? And so I think that while it's a horrible time, it is a time to not let go of aspiration. Right? Do you both agree with that? Yes.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely highlighted a couple of issues that we have in our society, and how the system doesn't quite work. I don't think that people should move forward feeling as though they don't have enough food or there's not enough funding for the arts. Just thinking about, again, having the perspective of abundance. Hopefully people can move forward with that mindset instead of scarcity. I think that the city cutting the funding is making a bad situation worse. And just thinking about your interview this morning on Instagram Live, or this afternoon, the artist that you spoke to, Meg, mentioned that it doesn't even sound like it's a sound business decision because arts brings in so much revenue to cities. So I hope that it teaches people, or people can creatively think of ways to operate outside of the current system that we're in.
Yeah, Mica?
I agree. I mean, every crisis presents opportunities, and who is going to be organized to take those opportunities? I think the folks in Washington right now are definitely taking this opportunity to decimate state and local infrastructure. They're taking this opportunity to roll back a lot of environmental regulations that we need for our health and the future of this planet. How are we going to do the same from the other direction, in the ways, that you guys are both highlighting?
There's so much at stake right now. I can't think of another time when there was more at stake. And so let me ask this question. I mean, so for both of you, so how can artists be involved in shaping government and having a say about policies and programs? What can we do? Is there something that I'm missing that you'd suggest?
I think that changing the status quo, I think it involves just highlighting issues that are already being magnified by the pandemic. For example, I'm thinking about today I heard that Jeff Bezos might be the first trillionaire, and I think that's ridiculous. Like, why could he build that much around him and then other people are struggling so much? So I think that artists honestly can just highlight the issues even more and then think of creative ways to move forward.
One thing I've been thinking about is how many artists there are in city government as it is. I had, around the same time that we connected, Jane, another idea I'd had that did not take flight in the same way was that, you know, sending out an all staff city email to the tens of thousands of city employees asking, you know, who can draw, who can, like, you know, public health needs you right now. And that didn't happen. But one of the other exciting artist connections we've made that came about through, you know, a very roundabout chain of connections is a staff person in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Evan, whose work I think we're hopefully incorporating into the posters that are going out as part of our collaboration. So for folks watching, hopefully coming soon, I Wear a Mask, coming soon to a corner store near you. But yeah, I mean, and thinking how many other Evans there are in city government, and how, you know, going forward, we can all, I mean, the way I was talking before about how grateful I am to my regular leadership and other folks in the health department for letting me, you know, bring all my talents to the table, and thinking about people whose talents are in creating art, and how, you know, if they're already there, how we better connect with that side of them as well as the civil servant side.
So that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about all the artists in city government and how to mobilize them, right? That's interesting. I always think about artists across the city, but not so much in city government. Yeah, that's a wonderful thought. I mean, I think that, you know, for us at Mural Arts, I always feel that when it comes to really complicated issues, that our traditional ways of dealing with them fail us. They just do, right? And so our ability as a society to hold on to innovation and creativity and have artists at the table, we can't negate that, because it's something, I always find that they think about something in a way that no one else does. Like, I'm sure if Niall and I are sitting at a table and we're talking about an issue, I'm going to say, Niall, what do you think? And something will come out of Niall's head that'll be like, that's right. You know, I think about like our Southeast by Southeast program that started because Shira Walensky said, we need a hub space. And I was like, what? She was, well, why don't we just take over a store? I'm like, oh, we would just rent it? Oh, right. Yeah. And like 8 years later, and it belongs to the community, really. And it's like, oh, an artist had that idea. And so I feel like we always need, and I don't know why, and Meg said that today, Niall, about why it's sort of an either or proposition. Like, well, we can have this or art, but you can't have both. And I think, well, we can, because we should, because it's like, this is, you know, I think that both what you said, Niall, what Meg said today, sort of being about survival, about our commonality, about our humanity. And then, Mica, going back to what you said, from a practical standpoint, I think that art is important. So yeah, so anyway, I get very excited when I think about all this, because our work is so enriched by the artists in our midst. And now I'm going to think about all the artists in city government. And I know Evan, and that I'm going to really look forward to seeing that. So that's great. So now it's 5:55. And so what I would like people to do is to, I want to encourage everyone to submit your questions. And in 5 minutes, we're going to take questions, and we love questions, and so you should ask away. And so, Mica, I want to sort of go back to you for a minute, because I'm just so interested in, for like how you see your future, like with public health and the things that you're aspiring to work on. And again, like, what's a dream project that you'd like to do when you think about like what, somebody said, here's, come up with something you'd really like to work on over the next few years. Like, what would that be?
Oof. Someone asked me when I was thinking about a meeting tomorrow morning, and I was like, I haven't thought that far in advance. I have been so laser focused on, I haven't worked this hard since I was an organizer, and I've been so laser focused on what I'm doing.
Wow.
I am not, give me a second on that.
Nayal, what's a dream project for you that you'd like to work on over the next?
I'm also just currently overwhelmed in trying to finish the projects on my plate that I haven't thought that far ahead. But I think that, honestly, maybe I would say just focusing on self-care and being okay resting and taking this as an opportunity to slow down a little bit.
And have you figured that out to find some balance?
Yeah, because when this first started, I also boosted up my productivity level to the point where it's not sustainable. So I think just recharging is important, and then figuring out what the next step is.
I think that's really
after
important.
I finish what's currently on my plate. Yeah.
Right. We have more assignments for you. I'm sorry. Nayal is like a sort of go-to person. Yeah, but I think that, that there's not one, I'm a bad example of this. I have I'm so neurotic. I'm like, but that is something that's really critical, especially during this time. It is a time when we should take a deep breath and not have such, I feel like I'm in a state of frenetic energy all the time. But that if you have an idea, you can come to us and that we would.
Yes. Thank you. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I think it's important that artists know that they have a home at Mural Arts. We had a big show at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts some years ago, and we had a total of how many artists we've worked with since 1988. It was something like 18,000 or something, some 15 to 18,000 was a giant amount of artists. And so I feel like we're sort of the WPA. We've come back as the Mural Arts program. Don't tell anybody. Maybe people get mad at us in the federal government. But the WPA is back in Philly. So Mica, any last thoughts for either of you before we turn to questions?
In trying to think about, and I need to go back and watch the tape of Nayal's answer to her vision, because I was trying to think beyond tomorrow to answer that question. And I think as far as I could go was, what comes next in our recovery from this, and how we continue to maintain that spirit of understanding everything that goes into public health, as we recover from this pandemic, as we prepare for the next one, how do we make sure that the inequities that are playing out in terms of who is getting sick and who is dying from COVID-19 that we are not having the same conversation in the next pandemic about why that is, and what we need to do to change it, that we actually change those things in the meantime, and recognize that if we want to be prepared for a pandemic, we need to think about housing as health, and water as health, and education as health, and that those are all part of figuring out how we are not even just because it's not for all the reasons that I would have said in the past as an organizer, but just purely pragmatically for the city and state, country, and world to figure out a different way of operating that recognizes that.
Yeah, you're talking about systemic change. How do we, I know that I've talked to my colleagues in the arts sector and say, how are you how are we, and but it's not just the arts, it's what you're talking about as well. So how do we not find ourselves again at a precipice, right? Like, but sometimes we have these circular conversations, and what does that mean to really make sure that we're not here in several years? Because it can happen, and we have to figure out like how policy change happens, who we vote for, what they stand for, what they represent, and it's absolutely critical that that happen. Thank you. That was so eloquent. I really appreciate that. One of my colleagues asked the question, do you think the coronavirus projects are giving artists a chance to connect with the city in a new way, or make their art part of the common experience of the city? So that would be to both of you. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's making us look more at the people in the city who are the most vulnerable, and thinking about ways that we can use art and the public to help in any way we can, even if it's just bringing attention to them or bringing attention to resources that we can offer them. So I think that art in the city during this pandemic, I think it's, I can see it being used more often as a tool to help the city.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think what I liked is like the Department of Behavioral Health called us last week. I think that it's sort of catching, like, I think even people who know, oh, we count on mural arts, but they're sort of thinking about it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Mica, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah.
I think, you know, for me personally, it's so interesting. I am on a first name basis with a lot of mural arts artists now who I have never met. But, you know, I'm talking with Judy or Lindsay, and I'm like, oh yes, Niall's pieces or Daniel's pieces or Shira's pieces. And well, what about, have you heard back from Lucia? You know, like these, and I have not met any of you. So Niall, it's so nice to put a name to your, a face to your work.
Thank you, Mica.
And I look forward in the future when we can all, you know,
meet in person.
Again someday, to meet more people in person.
Here's another question. So what are some easy ways to organize a collaborative project that would engage and inspire local artists during this very difficult time?
A collaborative project that would engage and inspire local artists.
What are some easy ways to organize a collaborative project that would engage and inspire local artists during this difficult time?
I think more people are moving to online platforms. So I would suggest digging through social media to see artists who otherwise haven't been highlighted as often, but who are still producing work, and reaching out to see what kind of collaboration can happen with them. Because I when I'm online, like my newsfeed is flooded with creativity. So I think there's so many people out there who have really great ideas who just need a platform.
And there's that Fill the Walls project.
Oh yes, Grandquist, everybody, yeah.
I mean, that seemed, I don't know, I'm sure both of you know much more about it, but that seems like a kind of amazing collaboration that's happening in the city as well.
Yeah, that's really great for people. I mean, really, you should go look up Fill the Walls, because that's wonderful. And for those of you who want to get involved in doing something in a public space, I would go there. I'd look up Fill the Walls, but also you can reach out to Mural Arts. And you know, just this goes without saying, but for artists interested in working in public space, we are going to work in public space again. We hope that we'll be outside working safely this summer, because you can work outside and be pretty solitary. And artists will continue doing work, as Niall is, in their studio or their homes. So that's another good way. And then we collect it and we put it up around the city. So we feel like pretty undaunted about that. So if you're interested, we have a Mirrorless training program, and there are, you know, we're doing all these decals. So please reach out to us. And here's another question: how can Mural Arts and other organizations merge the body of Philly artists and organizers and incentivize the connection. Oh, I guess this question is for me. That's a really good question, actually. I would say a couple ways. The best way would be to go to our website. Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about a practical way, and then I want to talk about other ways. So one is, if you go to our website, you can fill out a mural application. And so anybody anywhere in the city can have an idea and apply to us for that idea. Now our funding is limited, but we're pretty tenacious and scrappy, so we'll look for additional funding. But that could be, and you could be an organization who wants to work, like, let's say Women Against Abuse has an artist they'd like to work with, and they have an idea for a project and a good wall. I think that we could possibly bring that to life. Like, we like that. We like ideas. One of my favorite projects that we did a long time ago was at Ridge and Broad. There's a building now. I think it's owned by Steven Starr, but it used to be the Ridge Avenue Shelter. And a homeless advocacy group applied for us to do a mural there. And the artist found out that a lot of the men, it was a men's shelter, who were homeless had been welders and carpenters. And so he made the mural three-dimensional, and he turned the third floor of the shelter into a metal shop. And, so it was like, oh, suddenly the project took on a life of its own, but it's sort of, the project itself was sort of a call to action. And then it's our responsibility to let it be generative so that it does really good things. So that's one way to that's a practical way that we can incentivize this connection. The other is, you could have an idea and you could come to us with an idea. The third way is, in any of our divisions, Porchlight, Criminal Justice, or Education, we're always working with different community-based organizations. And some of those divisions actually are putting out calls often for activists and organizers and artists to come together to do work. So people should sort of come to our website, send us ideas, fill out a mural application. They're all different ways that we could try to stir the pot and be a catalyst. But we'd really love to do that. That sort of makes our hearts sing at Mural Arts, to be honest with you. Here's another question. How have you noticed people interacting with the rapid response projects? Nael and Mica, do you want to take that? Do you have
well, I see a lot of people sharing the murals that me and the other artists worked on, as well as the space pad projects, which are markers on the ground where you stand 6 feet away from each other. Mm-hmm. And then I went to go visit it in person, and walking by, people would turn their head and look at it. So I think it definitely draws attention to the hand washing stations.
Yeah.
And people have used the image as an image in their articles or blog posts.
Yes, definitely. Mica, do you have?
I mean, I've heard things secondhand. I'm actually this weekend planning a bike ride out to a bunch of the locations. I sold it to my partner's children as a really fun activity we can do because they're losing their minds. And I was like, well, we can, and biking on trail, I mean, there are too many people. Reminder to all, wear a mask. Don't go on crowded trails. So, we've been trying to bike through city streets. So this will be a fun set of destinations to go around and in a safely distanced way, get some exercise while also seeing this project in person, and I'll report back on how people are interacting with it.
Oh, please do that. And that's, for everybody out there, that's a good thing to do. And so what I've been hearing is through the eyes of assistant artists and the crew that have been putting up the murals in Center City. We're doing this a great initiative with the Center City District. And so they said that people have been watching, that people say they shift how they're walking, so they'll walk by the art, and that a few people have said to them this brings them a moment of joy that they had not imagined they could have. So that's really nice. And I have heard such great things about the space pads, and that so many other markets and bodegas are calling us now, and pharmacies, because they really are interested in them from a practical standpoint. And I just want to say, and they are just really, really beautiful, just really just gorgeous. And then we have another question. What role of art do you see for taking over abandoned buildings and the role youth artists can play in that? Oh, that's interesting. Well, we're always interested in putting art everywhere. So, and we have a great, as I said before, an art education program. And we do a number of murals every year with kids in our art ed program. And I think that abandoned buildings hold particular interest for us because you can, temporary work is just really, I think temporal work is interesting because you can play around with different surfaces, photographs, scrim. So if people out there have sites in mind, they've seen either inhabited buildings or abandoned buildings, you should reach out to us and with ideas. Nayel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, last night I just watched a documentary on Theaster Gates in Chicago, who's an artist who goes into abandoned spaces and uses the raw beauty of the abandoned space to create community spaces. So there's, I think, so much that can be done with abandoned homes. Like, for example, he took an old abandoned bank and turned it into an art center in Chicago. He turned a space into a cafe. And in terms of arts, I think people will be excited to see each other in person. So I have to brainstorm on that idea some more, but I am excited about the potential to turn abandoned buildings into public resources.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that because our storefronts in Kensington and Tacony, the neighborhood time exchange, Southeast by Southeast, like every time we've done that, it has taken sort of something empty and vacant and turned it into a community like asset that is beloved, right? And it's not that much money. I mean, none of this is like brain surgery or super expensive. And these spaces are all co-owned by the community. It's a very collaborative approach. It's really, I mean, when people from Southeast by Southeast, they don't even, or Kensington don't mention mural arts, I'm like, yay, that's good. Just, this is yours. And we could just start to, it's really about lifting up and valuing the authorship that exists beautifully throughout the city of Philadelphia. But abandoned buildings can be turned into assets. Yes, you heard it here. There's another question. Final question in capital letters. The WPA helped forge national unity as well as strong local identity. Could we hope that artists all over the country working as Nayel and others have here might move us in that direction? What do you think, Nayel? A movement? Can we start a movement here? Forge national identity as well as strong local identity. Can we hope that artists could move us in that direction?
For sure. I think that although it's called Mural Arts Philadelphia, I think that we already have national and international impact. So I absolutely see a movement happening from this.
I do too. And I think the WPA is a powerful image as we close to hold on to, because I think that that a movement that unites artists with, think about it, with prisons, with libraries, with rec centers, with social service agencies. There is so much, especially today, work that needs to be done. We can, as the person who wrote this question, we can marshal the energy and creativity of so many artists here and across the country and put people to work in a way that is profound. I mean, I think we've seen that over 35 years. We have evidence of it. We have data that indicates it's successful. And so I think that what we want from our policymakers and our elected officials here and far beyond to Washington is we want them to understand the vital role that art can play. But beyond that, I want to underscore, Mica, you, because having you're a change agent in government. You and your colleagues are doing awesome work at the department. And I have so many colleagues across the city of Philadelphia that I have so much respect for. And I think that we need to understand that the way out of this morass is the public and private sector working together. And of course, we're always going to be a champion for the arts. but it's really about our sort of common collective humanity that is going to light the way for us to move forward. So we've reached the end of our hour, but I want to end with just some thoughts that cities are struggling, and before the pandemic and after, and that we're facing a lot of serious crises. But I want you to hold on to the role that art and creativity can play, and just keep artists in your thoughts as we move forward, and support the art sector as much as you can. And at Mural Arts, we're going to try to work super hard to keep our eye on our mission and our core values, and do our work with integrity on behalf of all the citizens of this city. For me and for us, this is not just a job, it is what I would say a moral imperative. So thank you everyone for taking part in the conversation. Thank you for those great questions. To Nael and Mica, thank you for all you bring to the world. It's really a source of light. I want to thank our sponsors, the JPB Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, and the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. They are supporters of our Mural Arts Institute, and the Mural Arts Institute is building capacity in cities across the country and the world to do work like we're doing here in Philadelphia. And you can get more information about the topics discussed today by visiting the muraLAB page at muralarts.org, and you'll find links to our restorative justice resources, video and audio archives of our talk today, and a blog report. And I want to remind you there are more conversations that are coming up every Wednesday at 5:15 for the next 3 weeks. We'll be looking at personal wellness, building community, and how the pandemic is changing the work of public artists in our city. So tune in if you want to hear more about how artists are mobilizing to help the city rise to the challenge. Thank you again. Please stay in touch. And remember that art ignites change. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.